Hi, welcome to Evil. In other words, Deltarune chapters 3 and 4, baby! That's right, lady horsies and gentle horsies. The top dog said to himself,
I know what we're gonna do today.
And released the long-awaited follow-up to Deltarune Chapter 2. Anyways, this video was originally going to build upon the supporting evidence of Noelle being the Roaring Knight. If you haven't seen it, that was the conclusion of my last video before the new chapters. Then, while I was playing Chapter 3, I was leaning towards Des. I cautiously barreled into Chapter 4, leaning towards Noelle's mom, Carol. Finally, with my initial reaction somewhat wearing down, I've changed my mind once more. The knight's identity metamorphosized into... well, we'll get to that, but what I will say is, I'm not asking who the knight is. I'm asking what. Winter's Night
Version 2 begin initializing. When the demon heart is crying and the blood is gushing bright, raise up your bat for the burning light. When your hope is slowly dying and your future's lost its right, raise up your bat and face the light.
Alright, before we address the cosmic horror-shaped elephant in the room, we need to run through those potential candidates I mentioned not too long ago. Carol, Des, and of course, Noelle, my beloved. And maybe a little Rudy on the side here and there. Oh, and for a fun video gimmick, my confidence in an idea will be represented by how full the TP meter on screen currently is. The closer it is to empty, the less confidence I have in a particular point. The more full it is, the more confidence I have in any particular idea. Got it? Alright, let's go. A lot of folks initially thought it was Carol, and I don't blame them. When you have two ominous katanas in your house, act really weird about anyone finding codes to your secret meth bunker, and your introduction theme sounds like if the concept of being cold could die.
The super Yuri killer is here. Pan to the right.
The Yuri killer is here.
The room gets colder.
I think in my script, when I'm introducing Carol, I'm like, if the concept of cold could be dead, that's her.
As I said, I don't blame anyone. However, it did not take too long after the release of chapters 3 and 4 for folks to realize it couldn't be her. The timeline of how the church dark world was made, how smug the knight acts, contrasting Carol's uptight attitude, the details didn't line up quite as much. Which is rather unfortunate because the nightmare pun was really good. Fox seems to have other plans with her. Like her insistence to rid Hometown of its police force being a great example. The game hardly brings it up, but due to the internet being down, Hometown is a socially isolated township. With Undyne and possibly even Alvin out of the equation, everyone living there is far more vulnerable than ever. Whatever Carol's end goal is, it seems to involve finding her lost daughter. Speaking of which, that leaves us with my favorite candidate. Or... in other words, December Holiday. Gotta admit, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence going for her. However, that being said, yeah, I'm not convinced. Call it a gut feeling, but I felt the same way for Chris, and Toby went with something far, far more interesting. Alright, so let me get this straight. You're calling Death Knight boring or something? Is that what you're doing here? Well, maybe not boring, but very predictable. And boring. Listen, her being obvious doesn't automatically make the reveal badly written or anything. It's just having the exact same setup Asriel did when he was revealed as Flowey, but with a slightly different context, hurts Deltarune. If Toby wants his next game to not be seen as Undertale again, Part 2, Attack of the Robots, repeating the exact same setup and reveal won't help him. That is why, at least for this reasoning, Death Knight is boring. And oh, brother, don't even get me started on the whole casual players argument I've seen. It is so easy for folks in the trenches of this game to work out this exact mental roadmap detailing how a casual player will experience Deltarune to a frankly nauseating degree. We live in a post-horror, post-video essay era of the internet. If something is a secret, it won't be for long. You want to know why? Because when you factor in the probability, you'd have to play through Undertale roughly 1,000 times to see the Mystery Man door. Lo, the Man Who Speaks in Hands firmly stands as one of the most iconic video game mysteries on the internet. Again, if something is a secret online, it won't be for long. If you've been around this community for any extended amount of time, you might remember this.
Hello, have some respect and don't spoil the game.
It's impossible to have mysteries nowadays.
Because of nosy people like you.
Please keep all of this between us.
If you post it online, I won't make any more secrets.
No one will be impressed.
It will be your fault.
Deltarune is made for and by people who love obscure video game secrets. The game thrives and flourishes off of them, and something would be missing in their absence. But with that said, I'm going to walk through the casual player's sentiment from the Death Knight crowd and still show why it's flimsy at best, because using fan expectation as supporting evidence will always devolve into a pointless back and forth, which is why, apart from a few mentions up ahead, I will try my best to refrain from using player expectations as evidence. This script is already busy enough, and I got better things to share with you all today anyways. And if it wasn't obvious by now, I'm not the biggest fan of Death Knight. So, if you'll indulge me for a moment, let's comb through why, starting from minor details, working up towards major. If Des is supposedly that lost girl in question, well, showing up in multiple dark worlds across town does not feel very lost to me. The voice in the code is also very Des-coded as well, and if that's her, said voice mentions not needing to eat anymore and missing late night TV. We see her watching said late night TV in Chapter 3. Further adding to that, if those unused code messages are happening while the story currently unfolds and not out of order, well, putting her as the knight reads as a confused design choice rather than a clever twist. And some folks will bring up Des's left-handedness. I mean, the mouse in her room is on the left-hand side, but let's try to imagine the knight's main battle sprite with the sword in the other hand. It would look rather weird, wouldn't it? Messes with the pose and clearly doesn't communicate what the knight is holding. This detail, along with the fact it literally holds the sword in its other hand while attacking, makes this evidence feel, as one might say, dubious at best. How about that pulse noise you'll hear brought up? If you slow it down, it sounds like a talk sound. Great! Muffet's laugh slowed down sounds nearly identical to Muse_smile. It's sound design. There are so many ways to play with audio. Also, the video that made this connection just plays the Lost Girl leitmotif at the end. Man, I wonder why people are associating it with her. And even assuming it's a talk noise, it sounds more like Azrael's god form than it does anything else. Shout out, here come my balls. Apparently, this looks like a baseball. Maybe gas leak theory is true after all. The only ball that thing looks like is a striped billiard ball from Pool. Pool theory when? The black swirl here is clearly meant to show the circular movement the knight has when it's in this form. Without the swirl, it's literally just a white circle. Apart from the billiard ball, it somewhat resembles the yin and yang. You know, the balance of light and dark. If Toby meant for this to be a ball, why is there not a white line going through the middle? That would indicate the two stitching lines, which, fun fact, if you look in Des's closet, you can see two little baseballs. If he can communicate that with less pixel work, why not do it here? Besides that, I'm not quite sure what people are getting at with this one. Okay, yeah, they're so nice and all, but like, grass grows, birds shine, and brother... There is a code in that guitar. Yeah, 1 of 3. One is seemingly with Undyne or Asgore, and the other feels like it'd be with Elven. You know, another big knight candidate that got disproven? If you are going to hide a code anywhere, storing it off limits in a super personal object just makes sense. This point doesn't prove or disprove anything for Death Knight. What it does prove is how much of an obvious emotional sore spot she is for her family. As it stands, I don't really see what people are getting at with this one here. Alright, but how about in Chapter 2 when Susie says, "It's like when your sister gets cursed in Dragon Blazers 2. Seems like a slam dunk, doesn't it? Yeah, I agree. It is. If you then ignore Susie's next line, even if her stats suck, she's still your party member. The knight's attacks are so powerful, an entirely unique status effect was made for it, the Swoon. Its stats don't suck in damage, it can do that Toby classic 999 damage number, stats don't suck in health or defense. It takes quite a while to whittle the health bar down to not even halfway. If anything, Susie's lines refer to Noelle. More broadly, these lines are subtle hints towards the weird route. Her stats aren't exactly the best across the board, and just generally, the whole route is predicated on Noelle becoming stronger. If this curse had to be anything, I don't know, maybe the trans-dimensional super being manipulating your every action, gaslighting your judgment, and forcing you to hurt your friends sounds a little bit like a curse. Noelle proceeding with our social manipulation of them would be the curse. The Thorn Ring also gives Noelle a trance status effect as well. These lines are a bit stronger as evidence than some of the others, but when you add more context to it, its believability wanes. When the Roaring Knight, well, roars, we see through its chest and helmet, revealing nothing inside. Is this a smoking gun? I don't know. But while we're at this part of the story, what even happened here? This is just the most baffling scene in this whole game so far. In the chapter called Late Night, the knight arrives late, tries to take Toriel, fights us, wins, kidnaps Undyne instead, and ends the chapter carting the strongest person in town to the bunker, seemingly with little to no effort. With one swing of its sword, the entire tonal structure of the game flipped on its head. Roaring fraud? You had the casual ability to disconnect yourself from the time-space continuum and roll back the clocks to try again. And this thing is a fraud? If you didn't have that luxury, this thing would kick your ass every time. Show the name some respect, please, will you? The knight stole your gamer cred. This godforsaken thing just sidesteps all known expectations Lightners have when entering Dark Worlds. If we can even call this thing a Lightner, it just casually enters and leaves the Dark World without changing forms, which might seem like a stretch to assume that at first. I mean, we don't technically see this thing when it dashes down to the bunker, but what we do see, though, is the fragmented shard obtained from its sword if we beat it, quote-unquote. The Black Shard. Other than the hidden eggs you can find, the Black Shard is the only item in the game that maintains its naming consistency in both the light and dark worlds. And if the weapon stays the same, is it really that much of a stretch to assume its user remains the same as well? This game goes out of its way to tell you everyday objects transform into items or characters when brought into a dark world. The fact it doesn't change could serve as bombshell evidence towards the knight not being any darkner or lightner. It subverts the rules of both, easily overpowering Undyne in worlds light and dark. And the Death Knight truthers are well aware of this discrepancy and how its form doesn't change. That's why you get fan theories like, the knight is a distorted form of Des, or Des is controlled by someone else. Sentiments like those are used as a fill-in to arrive at a conclusion. The alternative thought is admitting there's a fairly massive gash in the thought process of her being the knight. All of that to say, video game mystery speculation is at its best when you take an educated guess and use the text itself to argue a point. Inventing or ignoring established rules quickly turns into an anything goes fan theory battle royale. Fun, but baseless. You know what isn't baseless? A baseball field. That's right, I saved the best for last. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, everyone else in between. The strongest counter evidence I have goes against the baseball bat. I know, I'm even surprised about that. I thought I'd have to compromise with this one and admit defeat. But no, we're here anyways. So, let's dive right into
Third base, shall we?
The Death Knight assumption economy runs on the damn near uncontested ground that this thing holds a bat. And I don't blame anyone for that. However, something inside of me wanted me to dig deeper. As such, my thoughts on what this weapon was changed again. I initially thought it was a bronze arrow sword due to the lack of a cross guard. They have the same surface level similarities, but I wasn't super happy with them, the general connections and the likeness of the sword. At another point, I thought it was an antenna sword, which would have been beautifully ironic, but as before, I changed my mind. The sword I'm about to show you is not some random pointy stick from drop dead nowhere. It's a blade so legendary, it's basically non-existent to the general public. This is the Kusanagi no Sarugi, the Excalibur of Japan. In the myth that gave it the name, a wide field engulfed in flames surrounded a prince wielding the blade. When cornered by attackers, one wide slash from the blade created a large gust of wind, cutting the fielded grass in half. Embers of the fire discharged towards said attackers, allowing the prince to escape soon after. Let's look back on the flavor text during the night fight. Suddenly, the north wind blew fiercely. Suddenly, the north and east wind blew fiercely. Suddenly, a tempest. Out of the very limited flavor text we got during this battle, there was a clear effort to emphasize the idea of wind. Arranging this in the context of the myth, clear connections can be formed. On top of that, the Kusanagi was, at some point, lost at sea. Lost to the depths of the ocean. Hell's roar bubbles from the depths, the old song from the sea, the very idea and naming conventions of a dark fountain all relate back to this idea of water and the sea. There's a lot we don't know about our own ocean. It might seem a little hard to believe this fact at first, but we've charted out the vast expanse of the universe more than we have our own oceans. Roughly 5% of it has been properly explored. 5%. A place so unfamiliar to us, it can quite literally feel alien. A whole world of darkness just out of view. A perfect one-to-one to the dark worlds. It is no coincidence that, in a game about secrets, darkness, and mystery, the ecosystem embodying those traits the most are used as a direct point of comparison. So, pinning the Kusanagi as the knight's weapon, what does that answer? What does that accomplish? Well, it all but gives us a direct confirmation as to why darkness and the ocean seem so linked together in Deltarune. The sword tethered to the ocean brings forth worlds that invoke constant imagery of it. I think it's really cool that a sword so elusive with so many myths, rumors, and urban legends surrounding it is referenced in a game whose fantasy worlds might possibly be made by the sword also has so many myths, rumors, and urban legends that exist within them, and in Deltarune as a whole. And at this point, why should the dream stop here? During the Titan fight in Chapter 4, the flavor text reads, "The darkness slithers," attributing darkness to that of a snake. That is a very avant-garde way to describe the abstract concept of darkness. You want to know something funny though? The Kusanagi was discovered in the body of a serpent, a very specific comparison the game allows me to make, but I can. You want to know something else that's funny? The Kusanagi on display in Japan is believed to be a replica of the real sword, the actual blade kept hidden from the general public, representing authority and power. Wouldn't you know, the Holiday household has two separate katanas kept in their house. One on display for anyone who enters to see, the other kept locked away in the bedroom of the most powerful and authoritative family in town. When you bring a pencil or pen into the dark world, they become swords. Well, what would then happen if you brought an actual sword into the dark world? Would it turn into a great sword like the Kusanagi? Does something similar happen if you bring a knife? The Kusanagi lacks a crossguard as well. Swords without crossguards promote a very specific approach to combat. Slashing. The sword fighting style the knight exclusively uses while attacking with its blade.
We want to keep this angle here, and therefore we're using the big muscles of the back and the chest in order to give these cuts at this kind of angle. So not only are we giving big cuts with the full arm and the big muscles of the body and hip movement and everything else, but you're also giving thrusts which come around shields from below, above, or from either side. Just something to think about.
When I said the bat counter evidence was strong, I meant it. Shout out to my YouTube livestream chatter, The Roaring Knight, for this discovery. Turns out, if we wanted to know what the weapon was, all we had to do was just ask. So, to finally conclude what could basically be its own separate video, while December Holiday has a fair bit of evidence going for her, most of it does not hold up in the face of scrutiny. It's kind of insane how I've barely seen anyone on YouTube properly argue against her. Somebody had to go up to bat, and if I'm the first one to properly do it, so be it. If I can individually walk through each point, not make that many leaps in logic offering counter evidence, and point out the massive assumptions you have to use to make her the knight, is it really then the most likely candidate? Like, guys, we're not even at the fever dream part of this game yet. I think everyone should start thinking a little bit weirder with their ideas, alright? Toby maintains such a close pulse on this community. He included the 3 Mike Musketeers as a secret boss that all reference what people thought Mike was going to be. 1, a regular microphone, 1, a cowboy, the last one, a cat. Toby knows how invested people are in finding out who the knight is. So, tell me, in Chapter 4, when you're given the choice to think about the knight, why does it come so close to telling you who it is, just to then blue ball you at the last possible moment? If the knight's identity is so obvious, why even create a scene like this? Why maintain the mystery? If you still think she's the knight, I have a challenge for you. Provide me an answer as to why she's making the fountains. Not a what, but a why. Feel free to pause if you need to. If at any point in your response you said or thought something like, she isn't fully herself, or she's being manipulated or controlled by someone else, you have, no offense, robbed her of her agency and stolen her ability to make meaningful choices. How and why you choose to hurt other people is a very, very, very powerful question. Substituting that for what basically waters down to a cheap mind control twist is just lame. Actually, it's not lame, it's just not how Toby Fox writes characters. And to show what I mean, let's go through some of those characters and ideas, shall we? Asgore, king and loving parent, ended the lives of those who also had families. Toriel, queen and aspiring schoolteacher, quite literally sat idly by as her potential future students were murdered because she would rather wait at home, meekly hoping another human never comes. Azrael, prince of the underground, son of the king and queen, Flowey by tragedy, driven to nihilistic despair from his overabundance of choice, experiencing his world through over and over again. Despite the vast outcomes, he eventually saw the world as nothing more than a simple numbers game, ones and zeros. Spamton, a character whose design invokes the very idea of puppets, the literal symbol of control over someone else's body, makes his own choices. He gives Chris the loaded disc, then later receives help from Chris, allowing him to easily break into Queen's mansion, and he, for a brief while, occupies the Neo body. Chris, the literal protagonist we control, makes choices of their own accord from time to time, their dichotomy with us being one of the most compelling things in the game. The stories for all of these characters are given their impact because they choose to act or not to act. At some point, the Death Knight crowd has to concede on ideas like this. This is exactly what I meant when I said sentiments like those are used as a fill-in to arrive at a conclusion. The Knight breaks so many conventions, ignores so many rules, you all but have to use one of those sentiments as a fill-in. The prospect that your body undergoes physical change from prolonged time in the dark world is fanon. And not just a simple outfit change, but an entire body metamorphosis. The largest assumption you need for her to be the Knight rests on an idea that was never once confirmed in any capacity. But no, you lack media literacy if you don't think it's her. And honestly, 50% of what she has going for her just feels like circumstantial evidence. And the other half are reaches in logic so far, Marth's grab range would tell you to reel it back a bit. Death Knight dies here for me. I thoroughly believe this community got it right the first time around. Des is the final secret, lost in some place beyond her world. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not figuratively, but physically. Lost, and we have to find her. Her song name isn't just a title, it's a call to action. A call to unearth secrets and their intricacies, then show them off to the world, a desire many people, including myself, love to sate. Do you know who else embodies that call the most? So much so that they go to extreme ends to chart out and document the unknowns of their world? Noelle Holiday, a girl who loves secrets so much, she made a whole web blog dedicated to them. If you tie Des to the theme of mysteries, darkness, and secrets, she'll end up thematically linked with her own sister. I love this reading so much more. You don't have to worry about alienating casual players due to how infrequently she shows up. The only folks taking that call to action would be diehard fans, the ones who look through the game files and keep up with the new discoveries. It works with Deltarune's ideas and doesn't leave anyone in the dark. Pun very much intended.
Also, hi, this is editing me here. If you go into the mod tool and just look at the sprite names for chapter 3, the thing called SBR, Sprite Roaring Knight Sword, and you just look at it, well, here it is. It's the thing people always point towards it being a bat, and it's explicitly called a sword. And it always was called a sword the entire time. I don't know what people get at, man. It's a sword.
Also, side note, what are Carol and Asgore even doing if Des is the knight? Like, what's even the point of the conspiracy boards? They both want to uncover something, and I struggle to think of anything else they could be looking for other than righting wrongs and finding December holiday. No, Mr. Starkthorpe, they're clearly doing a Pepe Sylvia cosplay. What? No!
You're too wrong. Experience entropy.
Now, I know what I just did. I just created a supernova-sized power vacuum in both that scout and the knight's identity. So, am I a Rudy Knight head? Sounds cool, but no. And frankly, Rudy Knight kind of sounds like Cope because you don't want it to be Des, but you don't really have a whole lot of good reasoning, so you kind of start grasping at straws. Do I still think Noelle is the knight, as I concluded in my last video? Nope. I disagree with the conclusion of my last video. Still worth the watch, even with the new chapters out, but I disagree with the conclusion all the same. What I'm going to bring up challenges a multi-year mystery here. The very idea that the knight is anybody, and I'm well aware of it.
Well, what is it, you stupid bastard? My dinner's getting cold.
I hear you. Deltarune, at no point, promised the knight had to be anyone. Extending that thought to the rest of the video, I'm not going to argue that the knight is any Darkner or Lightner. Rather, I'm going to argue quite the unconventional idea, one that I would love to see more discussion about in this community. That being, the Roaring Knight from Deltarune is a guardian demon summoned by... Yeah, that's a bold claim to make. I'm well aware. This is the topic that motivated me to even make this video in the first place. The rest of this essay will focus on 3 topics: demonology, the occult, and the knight's plan with... well, I'll reveal who it is later on. If you interpret the knight as its own being or some sort of cryptid, guardian demon theory fits squarely in that camp. As long as the idea follows some sort of demonic entity or force, it works with this theory. The guardian demon framework just acts as a very compelling base for later ideas I'll discuss. With that, I'm going to put my massive magnifying glass up to my eye and predict your first question before we even start. What the hell even is a guardian demon? Raising up my second magnifying glass, we're going to take a super close look at that question. Alrighty, let's begin. But I'm going to do a quick 11-sentence quick shameless plug real quick and promote my Patreon and Discord real fast. Hey, I worked on this thing since chapters 3 and 4 dropped. I also did a whole other big video essay like this before those chapters as well. I've earned the right to plug my socials, alright? The Patreon is only $3 a month, and the Discord is free. I don't have any long-term goals for the Discord, but for the Patreon, if folks slowly pledge, and I can start to earn around $475 to $600 a month, I can go full-time on not only YouTube, but game dev as well. That's right, this he-they right here is making a video game RPG for you all to play. You don't just help me, you help the free playable demo I'm making for y'all. If you're not interested, that's fine. I'm frowning at you right now, you just can't see it. Anyways, join the Discord if you want to talk with cool people, pledge to the Patreon if you want fun video games that are fun, and with that, let's get back to your regularly scheduled Guardian Demon analysis, shall we? To quote the Collector, Guardian demons in the context of Egyptian culture were typically affiliated with one of two planes of existence, the netherworld or Earth. Often depicted guarding gates, portals, and doors, these demons overlooked entry into sacred, liminal places. Well, that sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Doors acting as gateways to liminal places? That is a damn near one-to-one of the knight's relationship with dark worlds. And in order to ensure protection of these sacred realms, it wasn't uncommon for these demons to wield long blades. Again, that sounds familiar. It also wasn't uncommon for these demons to be hybrids, typically with the head of an animal and the body proportions of a human. Well, what do you know, the knight matches that description and changes into a bird-deer compromise before kidnapping Undyne. And, you know, some of you might say that's circumstantial, but yeah, you're goddamn right. But guess what? We're just on the launch pad, baby. We're not even in orbit yet. All we need is $11 million more in funding for the Deltarune Amico port. Despite Tommy Tallarico's non-existent words, Deltarune absolutely makes reference to demonic forces. The game doesn't do it subtly or imply. Deltarune makes direct textual reference to the concepts of demons, demon summoning, and sacrifice. And it just so happens that two characters overlap with those ideas the most: Chris and the Knight. They have an uncomfortable amount of similarities to one another. So, let's go through most of them. Both are associated with knives. Their prophecy images closely resemble one another. Both destroy some form of tenna. Chris has an affinity for wearing devil/demon horns. King refers to Chris as Lightbringer. Susie angrily vents how their quietness pisses her off. I find it no coincidence that Chris is the only one able to equip the Black Shard. Hell, Chris's name in Javanese translates to dagger, the exact weapon type of the Black Shard. A dagger-like shard of the Black Knife. And they strike the same pose so many times. I mean, just look at this. These two parallel each other far too much for this to be a simple accident. A link is being drawn for a reason. And I think I know why. Let's play the main idea of this video in full this time. The Roaring Knight from Deltarune is a guardian demon summoned by Chris. When Chapter 2 released, the flavor text for the pop-up enemies stood out for one particular reason. Since they were based on hyper-targeted ads, you were able to briefly peer into the search interests for the main cast. And I mean, Noelle's entire connection to creepy internet and video game secrets was a seed planted from this dialogue. Well then, what is Chris's dialogue? You unconsciously clicked on a pop-up about demon summoning classes for teens. This line, man. This line, my guy. Chris is so drawn to occultic practice, they don't even consciously process the interaction. You don't just write a line like that and have it hold no significance. I've heard discussion that this demon is us. Compelling, but Chris can't control when we show up in their world. Us joining the world is the ritual that connects us to Deltarune, not Chris. An effort was made to link them with demons and demonology, which is why I find the relationship Chris has with Caddy very perplexing. In my previous video about Noelle, I brought up how Caddy informed her of occult findings. Well, not only did she do the same with Chris, the two of them actively studied the occult together. They did it so much, it became a town rumor. Enough of one to justify Susie saying this.
Jeez, look at you acting so holy. Come on, don't think we haven't heard the rumors. You know, when you and Caddy were kids, didn't you try to summon... I'm sorry, what?
This video has several takeaways, and I want one of them to be this. Prepare yourself for more possible lines like this in the future, because this is the more subtle version of, as you know, you are welcome here anytime. Susie ain't talking about this or this, she's talking about demon summoning from beyond the ether. Susie, why did you feel the need to just casually bring that up? What prompted you? She went from the topic of church maxing to demon summoning on the drop of a hat. And another side note, the halfway mark has been attained, and we still don't know anything about the Knight, other than who they align with and the dark fountains they make. I find it hard to hedge bets on anyone being the Knight with how little development they've gotten throughout the entire game. If you position the Knight as an extension of Chris as a character, from things we'll discuss later on, anytime Chris receives character development, so does the Knight, and vice versa. Yeah, we have all this talk about demons and knights, but what happens if a demon were to knight somebody themselves? Well, if you stand your ground against the Knight, that's exactly what we see in the final moments of Chapter 3. The file name confirms this interaction. Chris is being knighted here. Despite the curious warnings from the divine narrator, you, and by extension Chris, somewhat defied fate, even if for only a moment. In many traditions, contesting divine authority serves as a ground for a demon to knight the one that defied. Thing is though, this isn't honorary. If a demon were to knight you, that comes with 3 main conditions. Condition 1. The binding ritual. You are bound to an oath, connected to the demon's will. Is controlling Chris not just an extension of said binding ritual? Like the actual keybinds we use to control Chris, a literal binding ritual. Condition 2. The mark of allegiance, the fingerprint of the demon. In order to show the demon's power over the one knighted, a seal is left on the individual, an infernal mark, so to speak. Well, Raise Up Your Bat and its lyrics contain 2 particular verses of interest. Because I'm with you in the dark, with your heart as my mark. Condition 3. Knowledge via distortion. If a pact is sealed with a demon, the knighted gains access to forbidden knowledge, insight, and possible protection. This could explain why Chris's actions feel predetermined in chapters 1 and 2, ripping out the soul, plugging in the TV, inviting Susie over, slashing Toriel's tires, creating a situation so the cops show up, making a fountain in their living room. This could also explain why Chris won't attack the knight if you manage to get close enough to it in chapter 4. Why engage in unnecessary conflict with something providing you protection? These conditions can be tied back to broad interpretations from certified hood occult classics like The Lesser Key of Solomon and The Book of Oberon. Both grimoires are books about sorcery, mysticism, summonings, and magic. Time and time again, Deltarune makes explicit reference to Chris summoning a benevolent demon. Whether you agree with me or not, the game keeps doing this. I mean, the simple fact the knight is constantly referred to as an it could work as proof towards it being some sort of demon. The demon that comes when people call its name. If you guys are convinced by this video and its ideas, I want to see this phrase used if you believe the knight is some sort of demon. The demon that comes when people call its name. I want to see this phrase used again, and the knight is the reason why. But I'm not done yet. We're not even at the best part yet. Bringing it up once more, the song rated #1 in the Raising Up Your Bat category, Raise Up Your Bat by Tobert Robert Radiation Fox, acts as an elephant's foot of radioactive deep lore. Mike, rebuild the first verse.
When the demon heart is crying and the blood is gushing right.
Alright, stop. Mike, start digging. This lore requires shovels. Dozens and dozens of shovels. It does not get more direct than that, folks. The knight is one of the only other characters we see or hear about crying on screen, and, although not exact, there's a vaguely heart-shaped object inside the knight's chest, mirroring Chris's soul-ripping sprite. That sprite quite literally has a heart. And so wept the fallen star, making rivers with its tears. Then, slowly, from the bitter water, something grew. It looked like glass. In the Christian religion, angels are sometimes referred to as the stars of heaven, morning stars, or simply just stars. If a star were to fall, then it wouldn't be an angel anymore, would it? Well, what's another way of saying fallen angel? Demon. Luciferian analysis of the fallen star deem it not a force of evil, but rather the harbinger of enlightenment, spreading truth to those that hear it. If the bookshelf dialogue in the egg room is anything to go off of, the knight's tears spell confirmation as to where and what the shadow crystals are and came from. If the knight is this harbinger of enlightenment, of course Jevel and Spamton both go mad. This thing comes equipped with fragments of glass that make them see. Well, I'll save that answer for the end of the video. Trust me, it's worth it. And I'm just gonna sneak this one in here, but you know the pentagram? Well, the 5 elements that make up that star's points are water, earth, fire, air, and spirit, because of course. But it was mixed up. Watch what happens when we rearrange those pentagram symbols. Oh look, it's the Deltarune. Interpret this how you want, but the symbol not mutually exclusive to, but heavily associated with occult practice and demonic summonings, can have its symbols rearranged to look like Deltarune's main symbol. The game's logo itself could be a possible visual reference to occult happenings. That's actually pretty cool, to be honest. And to quickly address the counterpoint before it's brought up in the comments, the knight being summoned by Chris does not immediately invalidate its ability to make a dark fountain. The prerequisite to making dark worlds is not being something that came from one. What's really awesome is, if we position the knight as a demon, that massively recontextualizes the phone calls Chris receives. If you didn't know, WhatsApp has come to the world of Deltarune. In Chapter 4, Chris sends and receives a series of very interesting phone calls from, at least from our perspective, unidentified callers. I'm mostly convinced this is a group chat between Chris, Carol, and the knight as well, but I can't completely ignore that this voice speaks in fragmented, barely understandable sentences. When you try to call someone in Toby's games, you'll get two results. You'll call them successfully, and they'll speak to you very clearly, as if they were talking to you in person, or nobody picks up. However, guys, just indulge me for 1 second. What if, in this group call, the fragmented style of speaking could be explained by the knight using Chris's phone as an EVP box?
A mysterious voice repeats what I'm saying, and then moments later, another faint voice comes through and says, "Demon."
Now, I am more than willing to accept the fact that this is Carol speaking with a voice changer on. I mean, she is a politician with a reputation to burn after all. However, part 2, on the sheer freaking basis of how freaking cool the EVP box idea sounds, I'm believing in it. But let's cool it with the whimsy. So, sorry, enough frolicking, okay? Let's go over what exactly the knight's involvement would be in Hometown's anti-fun gang rogues gallery. Chris, Carol, the knight, and possibly Asgore are all working together to find Des. The knight opens a fountain to try to find Des in a dark world, then they have Chris steal the fountain afterwards. This could possibly explain why in the church dark world, the knight does not stop Chris from sealing the fountain. December was not found. My confidence in that idea increases when the mysterious caller specifically highlights that something bad will happen to Chris if they enter the dark world without their soul. The caller also drops the most insane line in the game: police sacrifice next week. God, this is such a baffling line. Easily the most obtuse line of text in the entire game, which is really saying something considering the other lines we've covered. Will that stop me? No, of course not. Because lo and behold, Guardian Demon Theory puts this line into context as well. Remember that binding ritual I brought up? Well, that often involves sacrifice in a lot of cases. Demons may be unwilling to provide protection or service for someone if they don't receive a sacrifice prior. This is not a stretch. The game is quite literally calling attention to a cult sacrifice in the scene. After the sacrifice, the spirit may provide protection for any party involved. It just so happens that the Wet-Nosed Bandits were confronted by something when they tried to rob the Holiday household, claiming they were attacked from the shadows by something merciless. This has been my personal headcanon for a while, but I think the knight protected the Holiday family by attacking the dogs trying to break in. The knight will attack those it deems a threat if the individuals it's protecting are threatened. Similarly, if you manage to get in its way, and the knight's will isn't respected, you may as well be its next target. When Susie opens up to Tenna, it's in such a vulnerable manner we've never seen her do before, recounting how she felt like a useless toy nobody wanted. Someone who actively repressed how they felt finally verbalized their change of heart. Tenna, of course, plays his role in the prophecy and doesn't respect what the knight wants, choosing to take Susie's advice to heart. Then, as if a mockery, the knight shatters the sentimentality, flooding the scene with itself. Tenna receives the physical damage, Susie the emotional. If you were to reveal, at any point, the knight is only here because Chris brought it into this world, think of the emotional devastation she'd feel. She let her guard down, let someone get close. What happened? She's stabbed in the heart emotionally. I mean, why would anyone really want to be her friend anyway? Like she said right before Tenna was slashed, people were only friends with her either for a joke or because they used her to get something they wanted. But if Chris didn't summon the knight, she would have never made any of the friends she made to begin with. a catastrophic mental tug of war for our second hero, Susie. If not for a little while, she will relapse back to her behavior from chapter 1. Not out of ill will, not out of spite, but out of betrayal. This time though, she comes armed with the virtue of justice. I and many others believe that, in the weird route, we'll exert so much control over Noelle, she'll become our new vessel, instead of Chris. I also believe that, due to how much the game likes to focus on think what Susie is doing, in some way, shape, or form, Susie will be our new, temporary vessel, if not for a little while. If I can activate game dev mode for just a second, Susie would be on the left side of the screen for this battle, as she usually is. Chris, however, will be on the right side of the screen, with the Knight. The soul will still eject itself from Chris the same way it did in the Lancer fight, even if Chris isn't positioned in the spot they're usually in during the battle, and just like in the Lancer fight, she won't hold back at all. When she attacked Lancer, she did so because she felt like he betrayed her as a friend, so he wouldn't make his father upset. When Susie lost it at Ralze for not being transparent with them about the prophecy, she quite justifiably lost her temper. The Knight has murdered several people. Darkners Susie would call her friends, and actively kidnapped a community member, maybe more, and Chris was lying and actively helping the Knight the entire time. There's a pretty popular fan theory going around that Chris will lose their hand at some point. That claim is supported by Chris being able to see through their hand when peering through a shadow crystal in the light world, Noelle telling Susie the protagonist of the in-universe series Blood Crushers woke up one day without their hand, Susie proclaiming to the Knight, as long as Chris has got a hand to lift me up with, the super secret gotcha minigame dialogue just straight up saying Chris thought they couldn't see through their hand, it's brought up time and time again. Well, I think Susie will be the one delivering that fatal blow to Chris's hand. The game set up a fake out with Susie mortally wounding Lancer. This time, she'll actually go through with it. Chris will lose their hand. Susie will actively betray her friend that already betrayed her. This right here is what I think the final prophecy is referring to. Unexpected friends confronting the fact they'll have to enact the unthinkable and seriously hurt one another in the near future. Susie might laugh at fate and call it stupid, claiming nobody in her friend group would let that happen. But only just a couple days ago, Susie threatened to hurt or even mutilate Chris herself, going so far to say that Toriel would be happy if Chris just disappeared from their mom's life one day. She's nervously laughing out of the fear that she'll lose the connection she's made, but she's also laughing at the very real, basically guaranteed possibility that it will happen, that they will fight. The question, if true, is when. Susie doesn't just carry the virtue of justice, she can also come equipped with the hammer of justice. In Germanic and Eastern European law, Mutilation of the body, including that of the hands, was just as punishment for malicious sorcery or actively hurting community members through occultic acts. Violent removal of the hands symbolized the handling of ritual tools or misuse of one's hands for the dark arts. Focusing back on the night itself, in occultic circles, it's believed that a demon's physical form manifests as guilt or desire for the one that summoned it, typically gaining sympathy or trust towards the summoner. Again, it wasn't uncommon for demons to be shapeshifters. These could serve as massive recontextualization as to why the night morphs its appearance while simultaneously having reindeer horns. Something clearly happened amongst the Holiday and Dreamer kids. An event so impactful, it incited a rift between the Holiday and Dreamer family that grew like roots. Asgore lost his job as police chief, then his marriage. The Holiday family lost their daughter, and they, along with the Dreamer family, never truly recovered. The remaining children, still safe with their families, affected forever. The poor children. It's time to talk about trauma. It's time to talk about something forgotten. It's time to recall someone we don't remember. It's time to talk about the tale that should not be followed. It's time to talk about friends. Acting as one of the most mysterious characters in the entire game, Friend fits squarely into this theory, and a certain cat from a certain story is the reason why. Alice in Wonderland is a not-so-subtle inspiration for Deltarune. The need for escapism, the desire to live dreams, the juxtaposition of mundanity and the absurd, stories can be retold, inspiration grows in many ways. Alice in Wonderland just so happens to feature a very, very interesting poem titled The Mouse's Tale, written by Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland. Said tale, T-A-L-E, formatted, resembles the tale, T-A-I-L. The poor children aren't following the tale in the forest, they're following the tale where the forest grows, underground, with the roots. To quote The Mouse's Tale directly, Fury said to the mouse that he met in the house, "Let us both go to law. I will prosecute you. Come, I'll take no denial. We must have a trial. For really this morning, I've nothing to do," said the mouse. "Let us both go to law. I will prosecute you." Fury wants justice delivered to the mouse. "I'll take no denial. We must have a trial. For really this morning, I've nothing to do." If the mouse wants to live to tell the tale, Fury's trial requires perseverance from the mouse. Justice and perseverance. Yellow and pink. Or, in other words, friend. Holy cheese and crackers with that one. Our good friend, the pointed tail, paints glowing connections to this poem. The fact you can connect these words to the justice and perseverance souls is incredible. If that parallel doesn't convince you, this will. When the mouse is recounting the story to Alice, it deliberately mixes up both versions of the word tale, T-A-L-E and T-A-I-L, the exact way the organics do when fighting them. This is not a coincidence. Fox is referencing this damn poem. And while you're all here, I'm gonna get a certain cat on the phone. You give me all just 1 second. Hello, Mr. Mad Cat? Mind telling us, what sort of cat you are? Oh, wait. Okay, don't go, please. Thank you. You see, I have this place I'm trying to find, but I seem lost. You wouldn't happen to know the way, would you?
Well, that depends on where you want to get to.
Well, I'm trying to get to nowhere. A certain man may or may not be waiting for me there. He might even actually look like you.
Then it really doesn't matter which way you go. Oh, by the way, if you'd really like to know, he went that way.
Who did? Oh, the man. Yeah, he was handing out these weird eggs. They weren't too important, but they were not too, unimportant either. I can't remember the name of the eggs, but they were white, like a rabbit.
What rabbit?
Fine. Have it your way. I feel like I'm going mad trying to find this place, though.
Oh, you can't help that. Most everyone's mad here. You may have noticed that I'm not all there myself.
Friend is either heavily associated with the forgotten man behind the tree, or just is the forgotten man behind the tree. I mean, the intro song of Alice in Wonderland just gives it away. And on the topic of music, an alternative title for Cheshire Cat's song, Twas Prelude, was Lose Something, likely referencing the first thing they said to Alice. Yes, Cheshire, I do think a certain family lost something. Twas Prelude and its lyrical meaning were explained in the book Through the Looking Glass by none other than Humpty Dumpty. You know, an egg? Interesting book title as well, Through the Looking Glass. Is that not exactly what Chris does when inspecting a shadow crystal? They look through the glass? Shadow crystals and eggs are both optional key items to unlock as well. Is there a possible connection between the two? I don't know. What we do know is that there is 5 in total. Everyone, stay tuned, I guess. And just like the slidey toves and guiles and gimbels in the wave, we're going to go through a fun little lightning bonus round of other references Deltarune makes to Alice in Wonderland, as well as some other small details that tie December to the Forgotten Man. Shawms, around here, you'll learn to find ways to pass the time or go mad like everyone else, is a pretty direct mirror in reference to Cheshire's "Everyone's mad here" quote. Cheshire tells Alice to find the Mad Hatter. We see the Hatter having a tea party. Well, the first on-screen appearance of Friend is right next to a teacup ride. The Forgotten Man speaks in the same contradictory tone as does Cheshire. Alice disrupts a bird's nest. Said bird has blue eggs. The bird then yells, "Serpent!" at Alice. Oh, cool. Another snake reference. Going from snakes to rabbits, the white rabbit thinks his hand was bitten off. He thought he couldn't find his hand. Going from rabbits to spam tongs, if you talk to Spampton in his shop and select the friends option, he says this.
Chris, you and me are already friend request accepted. We don't need anyone else. We don't need eagles or CRTs.
Ignoring the alternate way to the gotcha ball, the only way to get the trip ticket and see the Forgotten Man is to play the retro games on the CRT TV screens. The only way to get the egg in Chapter 4 is letting Chris sit down at an easel and paint. Spampton's lines here were retroactive foreshadowing for egg locations this entire time. And, of course, lest we not forget, Spampton's most iconic feature, his pink and yellow glasses. The odd controller found in Chapter 3 is described as the controller nobody wanted to use, likely referring to the knockoff controller found under Azrael's bed. Well, the most infamous brand of knockoff controllers came from a distributor named Mad Cats. Mad Cats. If you fully complete the mantle minigame, all the screens shut off, preventing you from obtaining the trip ticket through the game console. Thing is though, if that happens, just backtrack to the Gacha Gumball machine, enter the value 1225, and you'll find that trip ticket was underneath it the whole time. The sword route features several on-screen appearances of Friend. Well, in order to find the ice key, you have to walk between rooms so the trees can show up after you destroy them. Walking between scenes so trees can show up, allowing access to a secret item. There are a lot of connections, and I'm sure a lot more if you go looking. Just honestly, go look for more in-game secrets yourselves, or just watch Alice in Wonderland if you haven't. If you have seen it, watch it again. It is a classic for a reason. And to shift gears back to Deltarune, the game, once more, what if I were to tell you the Cat Pedders minigames serve as another softcore confirmation that the Forgotten Man is Friend? Because wouldn't you have it, Friend being a cat ties directly to Noelle, and she, for reasons we've discussed, ties back to her sister. Friend, friendship, you can spell find her with that word. If only a previous video of mine did something like that, I don't know. But remember, Des is the secret. The desire to find the unknown takes the role of the secret finder. I bring that up because in her Web Ring and Video Game Secrets blog, Noelle details 6 different cats, some of which are secret. The first one is a normal cat with an 80% chance to spawn. The second is a blue aura cat with a 15% chance to spawn. Third is a rock and roll cat, 4% chance. Fourth, lovingly dubbed Anglewing, 0% chance. Fifth, Super Holy Anglewing, so rare it needs 5 zeros after the first, coming in at a 0.00000 chance to spawn. And finally, the 6th cat. So rare, its spawn chance percentile isn't even listed, but it can spawn. And when it does, you don't get to play for much longer. What do you know? Our friend, good old The Color of My Eyes induces fandom psychosis, shows up on screen. This is our rarest cat. But aren't I forgetting something? Despite having their spawn chance at 0, the 4th and 5th cats can spawn, whether trial by fire or somehow rolling 777s and spawning them as soon as you load the web page, they will eventually show up. Clicking either the Angel Cat or the Super Holy Angel Cat will briefly display a church-flavored window. If you're gamer enough to click on that window in time, it sends you down a web page rabbit hole so distinctly linked with the Holiday and Dreamer tragedy, I'm going to let the next minute and 35 seconds speak for themselves. Enjoy! Whatever happened to her was intrinsically tied to a tail. A tail can intrinsically be tied to a cat, and cats eventually lead you to this tree. All cats lead to trees, and all trees lead to roots. Regardless of how hard they try, Chris can't wash it all away. Whatever happened with this pointed tail emotionally hurt a lot of people, but since they're a focus, Chris especially, it did enough damage to justify them going to art therapy for help. Here's what I think happened. The tale of curiosity led Chris, Azriel, Des, and Noelle past the graveyard, through the narrow glade, into the bunker, and down where the forest would grow. The moon was waking up. The sun was going to sleep. It was growing dark outside, and the children hadn't returned back home yet. Eventually, time fades into doubt, doubt morphs into worry, worry bleeds into fear, and fear leads to the police being called. Asgore, the at-the-time police chief, receives a call from either Rudy, Carol, Toriel, or at some point, all of them, letting him know all of their kids, including Asgore's, haven't been seen or heard from in several hours. Serving his role as both an officer of the law and a loving parent, he eventually makes his way to that same bunker the children entered not too long ago. He cautiously opens the metal, heavy door and descends. Call it a miracle, but he manages to find the children. Although, it was a miss. Something had gone horribly wrong. The children were in tears. The one with the red headband gave a 1,000-yard stare, as if they'd seen a ghost or a monochrome smear that was somehow their fault. The type of smear that, despite art therapy, can't be washed away. You can't wash it all away. Art is supposed to be therapeutic, but the red headband didn't know if they were the patient or the doctor. Despite his best efforts, the police chief could not find the fourth child. Fearing the outcome, he decided to take the fall for whatever happened. If anyone should bear the burden, it should be him, not the ones he's trying to protect. He was just trying to protect everyone, right? Working with the ones he had found, the chief led the kids out from the roots, past the bunker door, through the narrow glade once more, and back from the graveyard until they were home. Despite the momentary relief, the families weren't the same after that. Everything that could go wrong did. Chris felt left out for being the only human in hometown. Now, they feel like more of a shut-in than ever before. They didn't communicate with others because it's a lot easier to distance yourself. Connecting with others caused this whole thing. If you were to try to connect again, proceed with extreme caution. Chris, over time, became racked with a perverted sentimentality. 4 children entered, 3 made it back home. The reindeer didn't return home. The reindeer was left behind. The reindeer doesn't need to eat or drink anymore. The reindeer doesn't know if she's dead or alive. The reindeer was lost in abstract darkness. It is my firm belief that, under the ground which the Lightners walk, rests an expansive ocean of darkness waiting to be pulled from the earth. Abstract darkness waiting to be given proper context. What happens when you give it context? Easy. That's just how a dark world is made. Everyday objects and abstract concepts turn into something more concrete. A whole world waiting with its own adventure. But when that fountain is sealed, the objects and concepts go back to how they were before. And that darkness abstracts once more, no longer containing the context it once had. Where does the darkness that was never there go when it isn't required anymore? Back to that ocean of darkness. The depths. December Holiday isn't lost in just a regular dark world. She's lost where the darkness would grow. Deep, deep under the ground, under the deepest parts of the ocean. That is where we find December Holiday. Lost somewhere in the abstract, within the earth itself, rests the darkness in which she hides, pulling the fountains from the earth, bringing forth the darkness in order to find her. That is the Knight's involvement in this grand conspiracy with Chris, Carol, and Asgore, transforming the abstract depths into the concrete dark worlds. With enough time and patience, it's just simple trial and error until she's eventually found. Alright, we've spent a very long time going over the what and some of the why in regards to the Knight's motivation as its own entity. So, as we approach the home stretch of the video, its motivation will be our focus. Speaking of focus, this is a box. It can be interpreted to mean many things, but for this video, it'll be Cat Petters the RPG, based on the in-universe pet raising game going by mostly the same name in Deltarune. We're now going to pull a Mega 64 and go outside the box into Dragon Blazers, another in-universe video game series and the main inspiration for Cat Petters the RPG. Going out one more layer, we get to Lord of the Hammer, Gerson Boom's famous book series and the inspiration for Dragon Blazers. Once more, we zoom out and arrive at the Prophecy, Gerson's inspiration for Lord of the Hammer. The Prophecy is Deltarune. Everything that's happened, or will happen, is written across time and space. Try and fight it, and your choices don't matter. Zooming out to our final layer, Deltarune is its code base. I've gone over what the Knight might be, but not the why. Why does this thing pull fountains from the earth? Why does this thing only show up when its presence is directly needed? What is the end goal? Well, Deltarune takes elements from Undertale and recontextualizes them for a different purpose. Toby Fox has taken quite a few abstract video game concepts and turned them into characters. Toriel is the tutorial, Papyrus is arbitrary video game puzzles, Flowey is fading emotional investment, so on and so forth. Well, it just so happens that, by the looks of things in Deltarune, the Knight is the concept of linearity manifesting itself as a video game antagonist, and Deltarune's prophecy was always the game's code. Suddenly everything, and I mean everything, clicked into place. You think the prophecy is set in stone? Well, name something more unchanging than the code base that defines a video game. Freedom, the color drum this game constantly bangs on about, only exists if the developer decides that freedom is worth implementing. If a game is programmed in such a way that doesn't allow you to jump, you can't jump, regardless of how much you fight that. If that choice doesn't exist, well, everything marches grimly along its set path. The path that only exists because the developer allowed it to. This is what made Jevil and Spamton go mad. The realization that, despite perceived freedom, they were always pulled along by something far greater than themselves. How could you not go mad? We didn't have any choice when we were put into Chris's body. But Deltarune did, in a very ironic twist of fate. Even with our influence over them, we are just as limited as Chris. Mr. Fox first made a video game deconstructing morality in video games, ultimately concluding that video game morality is often a smoke and mirrors trick with no real impact. Players engage in the worst outcome strictly to see what happens. Because you can, you have to. Toby has now taken it upon himself to deconstruct the very idea of freedom in video games. Do your choices really matter if the consequence of every choice were already decided by someone else? Viewing games like this, you see them less as a haven for interactivity, but rather as an environment to survey the way players approach playing the game, the program. Yeah, that's right. This video gives an answer as to why Deltarune's very first demo was called Survey Program. Just like a survey, you're limited to a set amount of choices to choose from. You're told you have the freedom to answer how you please, but what if none of the choices are ones you want? Doesn't matter. Unless you just get up and leave, the only way to proceed is by picking something. Despite having your own freedom to pick and choose when you play Deltarune, the game's endlessly spiraling roots of control entrench so far, the only thing you can do is go along for the ride or stop playing. I mean, since when were you the one in control, after all? If you were told everything ends the same way, would you make unique decisions? Is that freedom? Take this sentiment, turn it into an antagonist, and you arrive at the Knight. Manifest linearity. No, manifest the prophecy. Why? Because the Knight is the prophecy. The crying of bitter tears that harden like glass, becoming the shadow crystals. The black shard, an extension of the black knife, described as merely opaque glass in the light world. Glass tapestries, you say? Oh, like the prophecy panels? Glass so permanent, even if shattered, they'll show up again somewhere else. Oh, like how, despite fracturing the black knife and obtaining the black shard, the blade regenerates, and, I mean, of course it reforms. The truth is written in glass. So go ahead, fracture the glass, stare into it too, glance Toby's truth. It's destined to show up again anyway. After such a long build-up, I'm finally able to say what I think is happening with Chris and the Knight. The Knight wasn't just summoned to help find December, it was brought here to ensure the game plays out on the set path it's supposed to take. The Knight is the safeguard for the plot, the prophecy. We may be limited, but our mere existence to the world of Deltarune introduces so many possible contingencies. Of course we need to be caged. The Knight makes the fountain, the cage brings us to that fountain. Deltarune really is waiting. Without us, the game lies dormant. Even if they don't literally have one, every game has its own prophecy, the events that must play out. With lines like, "You will sleep later, it is not yet time to wash your hands, the tap will be waiting until you choose to run it," the whole sliding bead toy, Ram complaining about Tenna making the game too linear, and the Knight quite literally just waiting to fulfill its role with the Delta Warriors in Chapter 4. Your choices don't matter. Of course they don't. They weren't ever yours to begin with. Despite all of that, however, Delta means change, and rune means story. Deltarune, as a name, quite literally translates to change story. What a dangerous game to play. You want to challenge that? Alter the outcome? Good luck with that. The tale that must not be followed has two meanings, and one of them is the preluded warning that fate should not be followed despite its inevitability. You want to instill change? This thing is your counterweight. Your motives and its contrast each other like light and dark. Just like light and dark, a solar eclipse and the roaring are both events that blanket the world in darkness, subsuming the light, the edge of shadow, where reality and dream meet. That was Toby's first ever public mention of the ideas that would later manifest in Deltarune. How can I not call the night a demon when these concepts have been haunting Toby like one since 2011? Penumbra Phantasm, an unfinished song Toby never fully finished, was the initial idea born from Toby's dream. A dream to the ending of a game so powerful, Fox deemed it worthy to pursue for over 10 years. The edge of a shadow during an eclipse is the penumbra. The roaring night could very well be the penumbra phantasm, enforcing fate with its blade. Because at the end of anything, even if there's no hope for the tale, there is one man that can change everything, defy every odd, paint a new future for everyone. That man is Toby himself. If he wants to alter and face fate, all he has to do is pick up that little white pen known as hope and change the story so desperately written on those panels. To recap everything we've been through over this journey of a video, we walked through the big night candidates and why the night being anyone was a promise the game's heart never made. And then after that, we covered the surplus of examples Deltarune cites that tie Chris to the occult and demon summoning. After that, we covered the knight's binding ritual with Chris and how it could possibly explain Chris's current situation. We brought up the connection fallen stars had with demons, summoning symbols and their tie to Deltarune's Deltarune, the knight's connection and active role in hometown's most secret social crime syndicate with Carol, Asgore, and Chris. We covered Susie's potential relapse in behavior upon realizing Chris was not only working with the Knight, but is the exclusive reason why it's even here in the first place, and the consequences of Chris doing that leading to the final confrontation with Susie that could very well be what the final prophecy was. Chris losing their hand to a friend that tries real hard to deny the possibility that she's capable of physically hurting someone again. I mean, the knife grows dull without play, right? And without play, how do you expect to get to Wonderland? Because we went over friend by using Alice in Wonderland as a parallel to draw links to deaths and the concept of going nowhere. And generally, all of the parallels Alice and Deltarune draw towards friend being the forgotten man, or closely associated. Follow the tail or follow the roots, the place where the forest grows and the exact place where the children would go. The consequences of a tragedy and how it set up the dynamic for a majority of our main cast. The reindeer is lost in abstract darkness, waiting for you to find her. Attempting to find that lost girl, the abstract darkness is brought forth by the knight opening the fountains and Chris sealing them afterwards. The grand plan. Finally, we brought up how the knight is exactly what happens when linearity becomes a character and how Deltarune's code is its prophecy, and the concept of freedom in video games only existing if the outcome was considered, programmed, and finally implemented into the code prophecy, which is the name I'm giving that idea, by the way. And we concluded the last major section with the sentiment that Toby is the solution to the prophecy. Again, all he has to do is pick up that little white pen known as hope. After all those ideas and the exhaustive recap, that was a lot. Congratulate yourself. Thank you, anyone that made it this far. Seriously, we have finally reached the finish line on Guardian Demon Theory. I am extremely proud of how this turned out. I promised you guys a follow-up in my Noel video, and I think I sure as hell delivered. So many of these ideas have been floating around in my head, and I'm so happy I was able to properly contextualize them here. Being able to give narratively satisfying answers to questions like, why are the Dark Worlds compared to oceans so much? Why was the game called Survey Program at one point? And why does the game tell us our choices don't matter, even if we're allowed to make them? Stuff like that makes me feel very happy about myself. And I'm gonna bring it up one more time, but Regarding the night being its own being and not only just one character, I've heard some sentiments similar to mine, but a lot of it is drowned out by Death Knight heads. Dear Deltarune community, December holiday being the roaring night rests on a very tall Jenga tower of circumstantial evidence and assumptions. Turns out, it's really easy to paint a character when they're a blank canvas. I swear, people default to her on just vibes alone. It's honestly kind of ridiculous. The only version of Death Knight I will accept is Chris summoned the night and it uses December's body as a battery, at least partially giving context as to how it's able to exist in the light world and the dark world at the same time. Going back to the dark world just helps recharge the battery of darkness and not show what's being used underneath. To go from one holiday sister to the other, I'm going to do a somewhat similar outro that I did in the Noel video. I've seen some of the ideas discussed here, like the Mouse's Tail poem and the implying image that says Deltarune's codebase is its prophecy on the subreddit, and apart from broad concepts brought up by other videos like mine, along with those subreddit posts, the ideas and their context discussed here are topics I don't see too often, occasionally, but not as much as they're worth. Seriously, I have not seen one analysis discussing, well, Deltarune
and the occult.
Rant aside, I greatly appreciate you all for watching through to the end. If you want to join my awesome Cigarette Discord, it's linked below. If you want to support the Patreon, it's also linked below. You can like, sub, comment, all that YouTube theatric stuff if you'd like. But remember this, if you like this theory and its ideas, the demon that comes when people call its name. That is the phrase I want to hear not just on this video, but any place where it's relevant. It'd flatter me, and I'm just generally curious about how much reach and resonance this video will have with people. And very, 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 very last thing, alright? If the idea of an altering world sounds of particular interest, December 11th, I'll have something waiting for you all. It'll be free, and it's an RPG. Like a frequency, stay tuned. Anyways, goodbye.
They thought they could stop a demon, I'm back. This got me speaking Esperanto. This ain't nothing to me, man.